So I'd like to call to order. It's 5:07, 5:05. 5:05. Okay, so we have Councilmember Harrington.
Yep.
Councilmember Matheson.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of minutes to accept. So we have 4 dates in terms of minutes. Were you able to take a look? I was able to, so it was, they're quite detailed, but they look okay to everybody? We can accept those? Okay, great. Super. All right, so we'll move on to our first item, which is the appointment to the Airport Commission. Shane Gable. Any
Vacancy,
comments,
it's a
questions?
partial term through
Partial term.
May something of 2026.
Yep.
Replacing Martine Camerbeek, who resigned, and so they would be eligible for 3 additional terms after that. And this individual is a county resident, which complies with the Airport Commission charter or city code regulations.
Mhm.
And who recommended?
This is the mayor.
The mayor?
Yeah, this would be a city appointment as opposed to one of the 2 county appointments.
Okay.
Anything, Scott, in terms of questions? No? Okay. We can move back to the consent agenda. Our next item is it's a follow-up from our discussion on the Armory, and this is for a grant that is for the CDBG Public Facilities Program, and it's for the creation of a new elevator, ramp, other improvements. So this is now another phase, is that right? Are we now moving to submit the application?
Yeah, we would seek council approval to submit the application. The council would need to commit to up to $300,000 match that would be funded by the general fund balance. Obviously, as we've been talking with Utica Center for Development, their interest remains in essentially acquiring the building from the city, but those discussions are still ongoing, haven't really fully, there's no negotiation happening just yet, but they still indicate an interest in doing that. But regardless, these improvements would help, whether it's the city that owns the structure going forward, or we sell the structure to another organization. I think having the ADA accessibility is important to fully utilize the building.
Yeah.
I would defer to Judy. We would have to ask the granting agency, if the city were funded, whether we could transfer this grant to another entity if we sell the building, or how that may or may not work. We'd like to keep our options open either way. I don't know if you got anything to add on that, Judy.
Yeah, I just hesitate doing it before we submit and get awarded. I'd rather get an award and then ask that question.
Oh.
So, and then if they say no, then you can make a decision at that point, not accept the grant if you don't want to include share of however that's going to happen.
So just a quick question. This is the same program now. This is a federally funded program that's through New York State, and it's terminated. Is that correct?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Right now, this program is open for applications through December 31st this year. We've been hearing through our grant writer that he's been hearing that they may open the program back up again, 26. We don't know how much money the state has from projects that haven't finished or that have gave money back or whatever. Right now it's not in the federal budget, but there has been also some talk of that there's a push to get the CDB program funded federally too. So we don't know yet, but we do know that it's open through the end of December, and that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get it in by then.
Okay, so by the end of this year. Okay. And is it through HUD? Is that primarily the?
Community Development Block Grant Program is a HUD-funded program. It comes into New York State through the Homes and Community Renewal Program.
That's right. Yes?
So why are we applying for the grant? Why don't we just wait and if we sell the building, the new owners can do that.
They can't apply for this grant. This is a public facilities grant that municipalities can apply for.
Are there similar grants that they could apply for?
There may be other grants, but it wouldn't be this grant, and it's not necessarily similar, especially not up to the $1 million.
And are we more likely to be able to sell the building with these, you know, is, I don't know what we can get to the building, but if we're on the hook for,
My opinion is it would be more saleable with an elevator in it, with a ramp that meets our own landmarks commission. It also would be definitely, more saleable to the people that have expressed interest in it because it meets what they wanna do with it. They wanna have housing for disabled vets and, vets in general. That
Right,
having that
but I'm trying to think,
elevator can help.
what would our share be?
Right now would be up to $300,000. And then Greg, I can't speak to how that would be worked into any kind of sale, purchase agreement.
Right, I mean, obviously that negotiation for selling, transferring the property still has to happen. So let's say the city gets this grant and then we seek to sell it and we're able to keep the grant and execute the project and make the improvements. That is $1.3 million of improvements to the property that help out the new owner with what they're doing. If the city's making a $300,000 match, I would ask the developer.
Sell the building for $300,000?
In that case, I would ask the developer, you know, is this worth $300,000 to you to get another $1 million worth of improvements?
What
I
I'm
think that
getting
would
at
be.
is, shouldn't you ask that question first?
Well, we're not even at the point of actively negotiating with them. We're kind of waiting for them to come back and have a meeting. I think that whether that comes first or second, we can still pursue the same end. Because if we make these improvements, we're able to sell the building or transfer it, that it ends up being at no cost to the city. Alternatively, if no sale happens and the city decides we'd still like to go forward with the grant if we're awarded it, and make these improvements ourselves for future city activities or future sale, if we think that's worth doing to entice someone else to purchase it, that might be a consideration at that time.
I understand what you're saying. It's still, it's just, we could be on the hook for a lot of money.
I want to just ask if Scott has any questions about this in terms of,
No, he's kind of going down the same path I was thinking, like if we sell it, what are we on the hook for, what's,
yeah,
you know, I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't heard back from the state yet whether they're gonna let us sell it yet or not.
It's not that there needs to be state approval to sell the building. There's a deed restriction, and the potential buyer does not see any problem potentially acquiring the building with that deed restriction in place. So I don't see that. I believe we're past that hurdle as far as with this potential buyer. I mean, as Judy said, the round is open till the end of December. We could continue to wait until later in this year, potentially. I think is it first come, first serve sort of a application process. Alternatively, you can wait till next year and hope that the grant is reopened again.
that's the problem.
So,
I would, almost let the council discuss it.
I think we need to have a council discussion. I will say that I think given that it's not, the forecast is rather bleak for this kind of grant, I think it's something that we should pursue, and I think it's important to keep that building ADA compliant, particularly because if it is turned over to this group, the population that may be using it may need to actually use those kinds of ADA compliant additions. So I agree. I think we should have a broader discussion
Because
as a
that could be
council.
part of their renovation. They're gonna renovate it into apartments.
We don't.
Well, that's their plan though, to have housing there.
Right, but yeah.
Can I just, I guess it's just a question for Greg, if we keep it, and we don't do the grant, if we keep it, we don't sell it, it's still, that ramp still has to change.
I think the front entrance, the ramp and steps, like some permanent solution needs to be implemented there, and
Yeah.
it has to comply with the Landmarks and Historic Preservation Commission guidelines, historic building. The elevator does not have to be done, but that's something in order to really develop, especially housing, the upper floors, you can't do it without.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
council.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, I think we should have a broader discussion about this. I do wanna say, I think it is a good opportunity.
The city overall benefits if we sell the building and then it's developed into a house, and that would be good. We wouldn't have to pay the $300,000.
Okay, so thank you also for all of the various maps of the building. What is the state of the current elevator?
There is no elevator.
There is no elevator, it's a new elevator.
Right, there is no
Yeah.
elevator.
Okay,
New elevator.
so it, yeah, it seems like it would really be a fruitful project, no matter what. Okay. So our next item is going to be the lease agreement with Adirondack Transit Lines, and it's the use of the office and bus terminal space.
Right, so at our new transit hub, 47 Market Street, leasing space to Trailways, again, as we did when it was a parking garage. They've been in the Damascus Field parking lot in a temporary location since construction started. Negotiated a lease agreement with them, $2,500 per month, $30,000 per year. This is a draft agreement, they're reviewing it as well, so if there are any changes, which I would expect might be minor, we would make those with the city attorney's input, bring to council on Tuesday. Again, previously, the rental was at the parking garage structure, and that went to the general fund. This is a transit fund structure, so that revenue will go to the enterprise fund. Question?
Yeah, any questions? This is also helpful to see exactly where the Trailways office will be, and then the bus business.
Yeah, and obviously I didn't highlight, I highlighted the office that would be exclusively for them on the first floor. There's the rest of the facilities, obviously, that we're
Right.
supporting them, all the HVAC system, the break room, bathrooms, public waiting areas,
Yes, it's
shared
a public waiting
space.
area, yeah.
So,
Any questions about it? Okay, and that 3% annual increase, is that kind of typical amount for rental to the city?
I think so, yeah.
Uh-huh.
It includes in there, so it's a 4-year agreement, lease agreement, and it includes in there after 2 years that we kind of reevaluate the amount, and, you know, if the costs have increased significantly more than that, we can adjust it accordingly. That was in our old contract with them.
What were they paying before?
I meant to check that, confirm it was $1,200
It's just under 12.
per month.
And this is sort of comparable to their other agreements in other cities?
Yeah, I believe they said that this was very similar to what they pay in Binghamton on the transit facility there, that's shared with the transit authority there.
Thank you. If there's nothing else about that, we can move on to the next item, which is the retirement benefits.
Thank you. Okay. So this, I added this today because we just, this morning, Ginny got a response from the retirement system. Remember Chief Witzenberg had come to, I think it was October 2nd, Finance Committee meeting, and then the subsequent council meeting to talk about 384E and 384B, EB. Two different options for additional pension benefits. I don't know if you'd like, he's here, we can go over that again, what the pros and cons are. I put a little summary just from my notes at the council meeting from when we presented, but it might be helpful. If you like, you can give it a once over.
Refresh my memory.
This is an
Please.
investment in senior staff and ability to recruit from other public service sectors. The 384E benefit is a 160th added benefit after 20 years, which the fire department has, to a maximum of 70% after 32 years. That said, the intent here is to try to keep senior staff that are trained operational outside of supervision, have a depth and breadth of experience that is very difficult to replace. And when they do end up retiring, we end up with a void that needs to be filled. That said, we have 9 pending retirements in the next 5 years. So if we can keep just a fraction of those, it's going to be a benefit to the city because we won't have to pay somebody what amounts to be about $100,000 before they become independently operational on the street, because they go to the academy, they do field training back here at the station. My officers that are new started the academy in April, and probably won't be cleared for individual assignment until December. And even then, you're going to require pretty, routine supervision, much more so than senior officers. That said, we're trying to retain those people out, so we have to recruit less people. So this is kind of an effort for us to maintain the staffing that we have. And then the 384EB portion of that is a recognition of people's public service time in other areas. So if we have a DPW worker, for instance, that has 5 or 10 years that's been working, because now we can hire up to 43, right? That time, if they do 20 years at the police department, can count at the end, and they would get an additional percentage added to their salary at the end of their career, which would be attractive to them coming in, not losing that time up front. It would count for something.
Does everyone understand the benefit to that? So to both to the employee and to the city. So what we received this morning were the costs from the local retirement system. So for 384E, the city would need to make a one-time lump sum payment for past service costs of $769,803. Alternatively, we could pay that over 5 years or over 10 years. Over 5 years, the total cost would be $860,000. Over 10 years, it'd be $982,000, equal payments each year. The estimated annual cost increase going forward would be just over $12,000. Obviously, that would change as retirement rates increase. For 384EB, the past service cost would be $961,000. If you do a lump sum, if you pay over 5 years, it'd be $1,074,000, and over 10 years, $1,227,000, with an estimated total annual cost increase of $14,435. So just looking at if you take the 384EB numbers, just for the did the math for you, it's 12% more if you pay over 5 years, and it's 28% more if you pay over 10 years. But obviously, the initial lump sum payment now would have to come out of our general fund or restricted fund balance. So we talk about our 35% threshold, where we don't like to go below that. You look currently, that 35% is calculated based on the operating budget, the annual operating budget. So that's $22,823,000. But if you take out the expenditures being funded by the restricted reserves, it brings it down to a net of $21,225,000. 35% of that, or rather, if you take our current unrestricted reserves, what they're projected to be at the start of 2026, we have 36.9% in our reserves of our annual budget. So we're just above our threshold of 35%. If you take another $961,000 out, say you did a lump sum on the 384EB, then you would be down to 32.3%. So you'd get below that threshold, where ideally we'd like to be. That's our policy. It's not a requirement by any state regulator or anything like that. Jenny, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, you covered it right. The only thing that I would add is that I personally would not recommend going under our threshold of 35%. And then when we did the fire department years ago for 384, we did a 10-year plan of $68,000 per year, and it was $680,000 researching for us and finding out what they can do to help us get that grant paid. So I've had that in the back of my mind that if we actually do get that many dollars, then we could, and the council decides and the unions, we negotiate with the unions to get this plan in, then we could use those funds to do the lump sum payment to pay save the interest of, paying it over 5 to 10 years. I do not know if we're going to get that grant, but I do now have some people helping, so.
What are you recommending we do?
Well, I think there's a recommendation on the form.
So I would recommend, obviously Ginny mentioned we need to negotiate this with the union, certainly it's a benefit to them, it's not gonna be something they're gonna be against. But we do have, the PBA contract ends at the end of 2026, so we'll be starting conversations about that contract extension with them soon anyway. So I would go and talk with both them and the police sergeants union, figure out how we would add this in, and then depending on what the council would like to do, if you'd like to wait and see a little bit longer, if we get this $1 million reimbursement from the state, and then perhaps you'd feel more comfortable, or perhaps you feel comfortable now going below the 35% and doing the lump sum. It saves some money in the long term. Alternatively, you can choose to go forward right along at any point with a 10-year or 5-year payment plan, and we just budget for that accordingly. And then the only other thing I think I didn't mention that's in here, it's the quote, one of the quotes for the 384EB is good through March 31st of 2026. The other one just for 384E for whatever reason is good through September 30th of next year. So if we went past those dates, we just have to ask them to update the quote and probably go up, I would assume. So.
One of the reasons that I brought this forward now is that I'm still looking at 5 vacancies and vacancies that hadn't been filled throughout the year. So there would be money left over in this year's budget from the police line that would go back into the general fund anyway, right? And we haven't got to the point where we filled our staffing levels to full staff. So we wouldn't be looking forward, we wouldn't be able to give back that kind of money. And I think this is a good time to do that because the money is at least in part on the table. And with the money coming back from the police department, this year I think we gave back $600,000 last year, would be a fairly significant part of the investment for the 384EB plan. So while it's gonna cost that much money, part of that's already in the budget because we have unfilled vacancies.
How much is it going forward, Greg, if we did this a year? We'll do it.
So-
I know we don't know the raises yet, but
It's
what's
about $15,000 per year is their estimate.
15, you said?
Yeah, 14,435.
For the EV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the just E, it's
12.
12,127.
I think if I'm gonna make the investment, I'd make it for the EB one versus the E.
Yeah.
I think you're getting a better benefit at both ends because you have an attraction now of people saying their time's not gonna be lost, until a terminal date that will be able to roll into their pension at the final end of their police service. So they'll be able to recoup, that period of time where like they were a county medic or they were a firefighter or a DPW worker or working at City Hall.
And it was a 10 year was how much? I'm
For
sorry.
384EB, if we paid for 10 years, it'd be $122,733 per year, so a total of $1.23 million.
And how we report that on the financial statements, it's reported in our long-term debt area, and then we would just budget for the annual payment when we do that service.
I was gonna ask next. What else are we taking on? We're gonna have Market Street bond payments, fire truck payment. We got the River Street bond going. How many more bonds we got? We got,
Well, most of the bonds that we have are for water and sewer.
okay.
So the only general fund bonds that we have is going to be for Market Street and the fire truck and then any future street work.
Yeah, at our next meeting tonight, we'll talk about the capital improvement plan. The only bonding that's proposed for next year is for the water fund. We don't have any general fund bonding planned at this point, but something like we'll talk a little bit about potential public safety building renovations that may lead to a bonding situation. And like Jenny said, any other larger general fund street projects, which we've been trying to avoid doing general fund bonds for street projects, just given the general fund budget situation.
I think it warrants a broader discussion with the council. Don't you?
Yeah.
But it's a good initial, you know, set of quotes and, is there anything additional you'd like us to know about it?
What's that?
Is there anything additional you'd like us to know?
Well, you know, like I said, that we were looking at 9 pending retirements, and with my attrition rate, I think we've slowed that down somewhat. But that takes time for us to really get a grasp of. But if you look at we have a 66% attrition rate, which means if I have 9 retirements over the next 5 years, I'm gonna have to hire up to 43 people to fill those vacancies because people leave at that rate. So, one of the things that I believe I'm tasked with is managing the personnel of the police department and how it is that we might best retain the quality people that we have and recruit people and see that they have some benefit at the end. And a third potential benefit for this also that we've discussed a bit is that now we're at tier 6 in the state retirement. With tier 6, only 15% of their overtime can count to their final average salary. So Ginny and I have talked about figuring out how it is that we might be able to bring more pensionable income through whether it's raises in pay over time and better staffing levels so that people feel like there is a more consistent staffing level, we have more stability over time and better pay. This is one of those ways for us to address that over a longer period of time. So they won't get the more than 50% in their pension, but they could potentially get, instead of 50% at retirement, hanging out for another 6 years and getting 60%, or another 6 years on top of that and getting another 10%, which would be 70. Right? So there's a little bit of an added incentive for people to stay beyond 20. And I've said before, in 117 years of the department's history, I'm now one of just 17 people that have lasted more than 25 years. That's not a great number.
Yeah.
We've discussed it at other budget meetings and even in the budget committee meetings. We were looking into ways for retaining police.
Yeah, and this is a
So
strategy.
The council's aware of
Yeah.
this conversation.
Yeah. So we could wait, we could move forward.
I think it's a good time to move forward in the middle of budget discussions.
Yeah. So the note says that the city administrator would like to proceed with the discussions with the police unions, but those discussions don't take place for a number of months.
They can take
correct?
place at any time.
At any time, okay.
If we added this without a new full contract, it'd be an MOA to amend.
Okay. So I propose we just have some kind of discussion with council, broader discussion. Keep them in the loop. Okay, good? All right. And so I think our final item,
While I'm just handing these out, Dave, Corey, did you want to share an update on any civil service exams and recruiting, anything like that?
I will be announcing either tomorrow or next Thursday exams for fire chief and assistant fire chief, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of it. Let's see it and get surprised and think there's something going on. It is nothing more than just responsible succession planning.
okay.
So you'll see those start getting advertised, like I said. It depends on whether I need to do some work on the specs or not, whether it gets announced tomorrow or Thursday after the next civil service meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay.
copy of these to look at what we're going through, but I just printed enough for the council members, so when you're done, you can, okay.
Take three.
Few back there.
Okay. Greg, do you wanna kind of guide us through this a bit?
Yeah. So obviously, as you know, every year we update the administrative manual. That's something that council has to do, typically does before the first of the year. There's typically 2 motions on that first meeting in December. One to approve the updated administrative manual for 2026, and the other one is to approve the specific salaries for administrative employees. You know, I included here just a general statement of the purpose of the admin manual, some background. The italicized text are just excerpts from the admin manual, and the city charter talks about, you know, the city charter gives the city administrator authority to prescribe and enforce rules and regulations for efficient management of city government, consistent with the charter and other applicable law. Makes the city administrator responsible to the common council for the administration of all affairs, blah, blah, blah. The purpose of the admin manual is to provide employment-related provisions for administrative personnel. It's defined in Appendix A. Appendix A is a list of the personnel covered by the admin manual. And the entire current admin manual is included in the packet, a couple pages back it starts. City administrator may propose changes to the manual to the common council with the expectation that annual changes to compensation and benefits will be approved prior to the commencement of each budget year. Covered personnel are encouraged to communicate suggestions and recommendations to improve the effectiveness of the manual to the city administrator. And that's something that has happened. I've gotten some suggestions from those covered by this manual, and taken those into account. Excerpt from the charter just references that the city administrator shall recommend salaries of all department heads, non-elected and non-union personnel for council approval, which is another way of saying those covered by the admin manual, as well as part-timers. And then the final excerpt from the manual is just saying that employees covered by it shall be compensated at a salary established in Appendix B, and that's in the back of the admin manual that's printed out. And the salary increase is to be determined and authorized annually by the council. That's why we pass a motion that includes an attachment. It lists every employee that's in the admin manual and what their salary will be for the coming year. Current version of the manual was adopted February 19th, 2025. We previously adopted it in December of 2024. The change we made in February of 2025 was when we created the new, we still have a sick bank in the admin manual, but admin group of people are able to contribute through the it's like a sick leave donation policy we have now. So we did it with the CSEA. I don't know, while we're on that, it's not to go off track, but Dave, we've had a few of those instances over the course of this year. Any general feedback from how that's gone? Because I think administrators and CSEA individuals can utilize this right now, not the uniform personnel, but.
So you can borrow, you put
Essentially,
in and
when
then you can take out.
Someone can submit a request to the HR department for donation of sick leave time. So it's like a on-demand sick bank sort of thing.
Yeah.
And this came about from the CSEA sick bank being bankrupt and not functioning the way it was designed. So we were looking for a new, better solution. We came up with this. And essentially it allows employees to anonymously donate to those in need. So it's not, you don't have a sick bank board that's reviewing what the issue is and granting a certain amount of time. It's done more on an as-needed basis. I don't know, Dave, if you have any feedback, Virginia, with
Yeah, we had
respect to-
3 cases so far this year that utilized it. I think anytime you roll out a new program, there are unforeseen circumstances, such as the first one. We put it out there in days, but then the first person was actually a 7-hour employee, not an 8-hour employee, so we realized, oh wait, we need to do this in hours, not days. So little things like that you just kind of learn as you go. We had another case where the other 2 happened simultaneously, so we realized, oh, we need a way to differentiate which donations are going where. you know, so, you know, those types of little unforeseen things, you know, we worked through them, and I think overall the system's working really well. All three people that asked for donations, I think got very generous donations from, you know, within the union and within the administrative group. And that, you know, so far so good.
Thanks, Dave. So that is, you know, we're not looking to make any changes to that, I just figured I'd highlight that, that's the change that we made during this calendar year. And then I just, in the back of that first page, I gave a brief overview of what we've done with salaries in recent years. 2023 is when we hired a consultant to do the compensation analysis. There was that study itself. There was also the 2023 NICOM City Salary Survey. NICOM annually does a salary survey, or maybe it's every 2 years, of various cities throughout the state. Whoever provides responses, they share that aggregated data and individualized data to all the cities that participated. So that's informative. They don't do every title that we have. They do certain titles that are pretty broadly utilized throughout the state. So those things combined with, you know, my understanding of the actual job duties, responsibilities, et cetera, of the employees is how I came up with recommendations for salary adjustments at that time, which ultimately, for administrators, were approved by the council in 2023 for implementation in 2024. And as you recall, those were pretty significant citywide. That study also informed our collective bargaining process with each of the 4 unions. In 2025, council authorized a $1,500 base salary increase for administrators, along with the typical longevity increases. One of the attachments, which comes after the admin manual itself, I want to skip ahead to that, just gives it from Ginny, just gives a history of the admin manual salary increases, 10-year history. So if you want to just take a minute to scan that, bring it to you. I think Ginny gave a brief history of how the admin manual originally developed a few meetings ago. I don't know if we have to do that again, but back when Dave Brenner was mayor, when it was first implemented, and historically has been, at times it was a percentage-based raise with a minimum of dollar amounts, and then it's gone to flat raises in recent years. Ginny, do you want to back with that memo explain what the total budget changes for current employees? Or, you know, just to make sure that it's clear.
Sure, so if you go to the memo, you'll see I just went back to 2016, I've had 10 years. And as I told the council at our last meeting, with the admin history, it was originally developed by Mayor Dave Brenner when he first came here. He found that the administrators had no guidance on their fringe benefits or their job compensation, things like that. So he developed the admin manual, and I remember him telling me that he was doing it to protect the administrators because he found that municipalities where administrators would go 6 years without any raise increases, and he didn't want that. So, it's evolved over the years, and how it's always been reviewed is with the mayor, the director of finance, the HR director, and the budget committee. Back years ago, we had a budget committee all and would be decided upon as far as what changes were to go into the administrative manual. Then, as the government structure changed, and it became the city manager to city administrator, then it was city manager, administrator, HR director, Then when the first city manager came, that got changed, and he wanted to decide all raises for each individual, and that got a lot of pushback from the council, but also from the department heads, because they felt that they had no, protection. And so then, we started putting in, a small percentage with a minimum amount. Then that evolved with building a grid, and after deciding how to classify the responsibilities and job duties and things like that, and then we turned to flat raises. And we turned to flat raises not only for the administrative group, but for all of the union contracts. And that's basically how it's evolved. So what I did in this memo is I just gave you a history from 2016 to 2026, showing you how the raises were calculated. Then what I did is I showed, on page 2, I showed the budget changes for the current administrative employees that are employed as of today. I didn't go back into history to account for all of the previous employees. And you'll see this was the total adjustments from the administrative manual formula, their longevity, and if they received additional money in support, because we wanted to adjust their base, or they received additional stipends for additional duties. And I showed you the percentage increases there. Then I also showed you the positions that received additional base or stipend adjustments since 2016. And then there's a history for 2022 to 2023, 23 to 24, and 24 to 25 to show you how everybody moved for your information.
Yeah, those tables are what you see attached to the motion in December that is passed by the council. So this is how we are complying with the charter requirement for the council to pass, and adopt salaries for those non-union employees each year, plus the part-time schedule, which is separate from that. So then going back to the memo, second page here. So yeah, 2023, we did the studies, we adjusted salaries based on that compensation analysis. 2024 and 2025, we increased by $1,500 each of the positions. In January 2025, the council also approved increase in the fire chief's salary by an additional $8,500. And that brings us to today. So the next section, I just wanted to put it in writing out there that, because it's obvious, but I want to make sure it's clear that my contract ties to the administrative manual. So the benefits the administrators receive through the manual are translated to me, and I think my contract states that the administrator doesn't receive anything less than the minimum annual raise afforded to an admin manual employee. So obviously, I have a conflict of interest there. If I said, hey, council, I think you should increase everyone's salary by 50%, that's going to help me out as well as them, or whatever it may be. So these, just a reminder, these are all recommendations. I think it is my job. It's just included in the charter and the admin manual that I make these recommendations, but just understanding that this affects me as well, and ultimately it's a council decision what terms are included in the admin manual. So, description of proposed changes for consideration. The first one, salary, I referenced the Article 4 and the Appendix B within the admin manual this applies to. Appendix B is where it lists the base salary ranges for administrative personnel. The grades and associated base salary ranges are intended to afford flexibility in hiring and annual adjustments based on individual qualifications and experience, as well as the hiring market conditions. It's not as restrictive as a union contract where we have a certain salary that we may hire somebody at, and then they might have steps to go through the grades. This is a little bit more flexible because it's not a collective bargaining agreement. So given the 2023 and 2024, when we first implemented those significant changes, that was a big impact on the city's budget. And understanding our general budget limitations, the council set primary budget parameters this year using no more than $1.8 million from our unrestricted reserves, along with a property tax levy increase of, let's say, at least $300,000, because the council is now discussing potential additions to that. I do not recommend significant increases to administrative salaries at this time. I think we should stay the course. And when I say the course, I mean that we did this compensation study citywide, and we adjusted people to be relatively equitably placed relative to the market conditions, and now we have some incremental increases for a few years. I think every 3 to 4 years, the city should endeavor to update that citywide analysis and make sure we're not falling behind, and maybe make some more significant adjustments depending on what the market is saying at that time, so that we don't fall so far behind as we were before and have to do a huge increase in any given budget year. So, given that thinking, I'm proposing a few different options you can consider. What the admin manual currently says is a $1,500 increase, and that's what's included in the 26 tentative budget. If you apply that, the total salary increase, base salary increase, would be $46,500 from 25 to 26. If you were to consider something higher, a $2,000 increase for everyone, the total base salary increase would be $62,000. If you were to go with a percentage-based increase of 3.1%, I chose that based on the CPIU Northeast annual change as of September 2025. That total base salary increase for admin employees would be $75,048. And then if you do that percentage based, obviously, each individual, based on where their salary is going to get a different amount. The largest increase, the admin manual, that does not include myself, but that would be $3,704.50. The smallest increase would be $1,503. So that's the difference depending on where you are in the salary schedule. If you were to say, we like that percentage-based increase, but we want to have a minimum, and we want it to be something more than $1,500, let's say it was $2,000, that would apply to 9 employees. So there are 9 who would be in that $1,500 to $2,000 range. So those are a few options. Obviously, the council can do whatever you'd like, but those are things I think that would be reasonable to consider. I know there's been discussion about flat dollars versus percentages, and I want to give options. Yeah, depending on what you, what's that?
Ask a couple.
Absolutely, jump in.
So, are you, in Article 1, are you proposing these as a changes to the administrative manual? Or are these already in?
No, that's quoting what's there. The italicized text is excerpts from either the admin manual or the.
Okay, because as I read the charter, and I agree with some of this that you got there, as I read the charter and I'm going down through this stuff, basically, the council is the primary, the ultimate authority on. Am I?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm just
Yeah.
misreading this then, what you put, what's already in the manual then.
Yeah, so the manual is basically what it's saying is the city administrator is going to make these recommendations to the council.
All right, now the
With the
council
council.
carries them out if they choose so, or they can modify it as they see fit. Like, you can make,
Absolutely.
so like you can make a recommendation, we want to do $1,500, and the council come back and say, yeah, no, we're not giving out any raises this year.
Yeah.
Sorry, you recommended as well.
100%.
Okay, I just want to make sure, I didn't know if I was like reading this the right way.
Yeah, no, that's correct.
And then, because I can't talk salaries or anything, so I just want that out there, I'm just asking basic questions on administrative. And I might have missed this, is there a reason why we don't do a cost of living or a dollar amount, whichever's higher? Like, because if cost of living goes up, say, 5%, but we're only doing $1,500, that's not even 5%. It seems like we're gonna be behind the 8 ball all over again if we have to do major salary adjustments further on down the line.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of living percentage changes every year, obviously. It could theoretically be negative. I think it has been in years past at times, and I don't believe that the council's reduced salaries. But I think the idea of having flat dollar increases, or as was done in the past, a percentage or a minimum, was to be consistent and avoid quick growth. I mean, really, it's a budgetary consideration. How quickly do you want to grow salaries, which impact FICA, retirement, overtime, of course. So it's just how it's been done. I don't know that they've done what you suggested, a max percentage or at least a certain amount. I don't know if that's been.
Isn't that what got us in this whole big salary, having to go out and stuff, because we weren't keeping up with by giving the flat rate?
Right. I mean, I think the market changes not necessarily exactly with inflation, but I think whether you do a percentage increase each year with a maximum, with a minimum, or a flat dollar increase, I think if you do periodic, I'd say 3 or 4 years, that kind of aligns with our rotation of union negotiations as well. If you do a study to check the market conditions and make sure you're not falling too far behind, then you may need to adjust by more than what you've been adjusting by, or maybe you're right on, but you make sure that you don't fall too far behind. So there's different ways of doing it, for sure.
Sorry, now.
Judy?
I just wanted to add some history to that, so you would understand, Scott. In previous councils, previous administrations, previous administrative annual discussions, the reason why they did the cost of living with a minimum and a maximum, it wasn't just a minimum, is because they recognized that a lot of the taxpayers were not, if they were giving cost of living on Social Security, that percentage was much smaller physical dollar than a percentage on somebody who was making $100,000. So it was a compromise. So they were looking at the cost of living, but they were also trying to control it because they knew that a lot of the taxpayers that were paying funding were not receiving equivalent increases in their own households. So it was a compromise that they came up with. So it was a minimum to bring up the lower paid positions. So when you just apply the percentage, some people were getting $256 a year raise. So they realized that that just was not feasible for that particular position. Other positions, and I'm aging myself here, but say they were getting $1,200 based on the percentage, that was a lot of money. You know, a $1,200 range versus a $256 range. So that's why they did the cost of living with a minimum and a maximum, so except for the larger salaries didn't go too fast, and it also didn't have that huge of an impact that it could have if it was just a percentage onto the budget. So that's kind of the history of what the thinking was.
And one question I'm gonna bow out because of, you said that you feel that you're in a conflict because your contract goes directly with what we passed here. And I can already think like other conflicts that might come up. Have we ever thought about changing how we do the administrative increases and have the council have a, group, whatever you wanna call it, that's what they do is the admin manual, and take the conflicts right out of it, because then it's the council, because we're all, we do this anyway, I mean, you can have your input and stuff, but like, at the end of the day, it's, this group would sit there and listen to, department heads or whatever, why, and justify,
Yeah, I think you'd have to, you could do that, but you have to change the charter, I think, based on if you wanted to have it be consistent, just based on that one excerpt that says the city administrator recommends salaries of department heads, non-elected, non-union personnel, et cetera. We're kind of doing that now in a sense, in a different sense, but I'm presenting some ideas for you to consider. You can consider any other ideas you come up with. I would recommend against having council members and the council or a group of council members interacting directly with department heads on this because of the way it's structured now. I think that is in conflict with what the charter and the admin manual says. Now, if you change that, that's the council's prerogative. But as it stands right now, I'm trying to just follow what's written, but we can do whatever you'd like.
And no, I understand that, but I also think that that's not 100% accurate either, because at the end of the day, the council is the one that's gonna sit there and vote on this, and we should have access to ask the department heads, why do you feel this way, we do it during the budget, you give us the budget, and we have the department heads out here, we ask them questions all the time, we have that back and forth, so I'm not sure how this would be any different, because it's ultimately gonna be the budget anyway, because whatever decision we make there in the admin manual directly affects our budget.
Yeah, I'm just
So-
trying to follow the established written chain of communication and organization. I think it can get messy, it can get a little bit, I think it's difficult for an entire council to have all those conversations, which are happening in public and take time to consider everything in here. I think having professional administrator and staff to make recommendations based on what we're seeing is a good starting point, and we have these discussions, but again, you guys can change things however you'd like in the end.
Just a couple of questions, so.
I think also, I'll just throw it in there, I think it's, conversation that you'd have with department heads, you'd potentially be in violation of, you don't want to appear as if you're collective bargaining department heads. So that would be the one
You
concern.
want, well, I didn't catch that.
That you'd want to make sure you weren't in negotiations, correct? I mean, that's a labor violation. So that would be one, I think, benefit of having the city administrator work individually as opposed to the council. That you would not want to be in any sort of like conversation with the department head about their salary for fear of being in some sort of like collective bargaining dynamic. Or department heads. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that it does say that, they're encouraged to communicate suggestions and recommendations, that's in the manual, so, and since the city administrator represents the city in collective bargaining, I don't see that as a distinction. I think that where you get into negotiations is when the other party is allowed to say, no, we don't agree to this, and unfortunately, you all don't really have that opportunity. Basically, what we decide is the the way that you are governed in your roles. So, I understand that concern. I just want to, mention those two distinctions, that it wouldn't be a negotiation, and that there is an encouragement to give suggestions from the
I
other
wasn't
side.
arguing that there would be negotiations. I just would be tentative to enter into something that would look even remotely like a negotiation.
Right.
That would be my.
And what I'm saying is the city administrator is the same effectively as the city council in that regard, so. I think the other thing too, I disagree, Greg, with the suggestion that we would need to change the charter because it says the city administrator may propose changes. But it doesn't say that the city administrator shall propose changes.
The city administrator shall recommend salaries of all department heads, non-elected and non-union personnel for council. That's the only reference that I was referring to in Charter C-48.
Okay, so we may have to change that. In the admin manual, it says may propose changes.
Yeah, again, it's saying that the city administrator shall recommend these salaries, but to Scott's point, the council can
Right.
disregard or take those recommendations however they want.
Right. I mean, if we had a budget committee, a standing budget committee, which I think has proven this year that is really valuable, based on the work, that we did on the budget committee that was established, but I think also just in things that, you had even mentioned digging into specific, budget objectives. But then this as well, because often it's sort of laid at the time of the budget, and we don't discuss it very much or ever at all. And then we just vote on it. So I think that this is a good thing to go over it. And I appreciate being given a copy of the manual. I think one thing that I would have liked to have is a salary schedule for people who are governed by the manual.
It's in there.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay, it wasn't in the one that I had from the other day. Oh, good, okay, cool. Then never mind.
Those are the last 3 years, goals, 23, 24, 25.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, the one that I had the other day didn't have it, so I wasn't able to. Maybe I shuffled it into my papers. Thank you. I have what I need then.
Okay, so I want to just figure out what we're doing because now it's about 5 after 6, and so we're going to have to end this finance meeting and move into council. So I think we need to do that. And so I'm not sure in terms of like our conversation here how we should best proceed in terms of continuing the conversation during the meeting itself. I don't know if that's something that the mayor wants to entertain, or if we should move this conversation to another finance meeting. Members of the committee want to weigh in on this?
We have time. This is not urgent that we do this right now.
Yes.
And I think we want to do it before the budget is passed. There is some pressure.
Yes, there is. There is a
We
time.
have to have everything.
That's correct.
Before the end of the year, basically. Before the end of the year. I mean, I would recommend,
Another finance.
this committee could refer this to council discussion then,
Okay.
so that by the second finance meeting in November, we'll come back with a final draft with track changes, and then that can be sent to council December 2nd for approval,
Okay.
theoretically. And if we get delayed, it can go to the next meeting in December, but we'd like to have it done at the first meeting. That's the way we usually do it. If that makes sense.
Okay. So then we will wrap up our finance, and we'll continue the discussion on the